Hey there, vintage car fans. Buckle up, because today's deep dive is a special one just for you listeners
Yeah.
of Vintage Car Chronicles on Spotify.
We're going to be talking about,
We're shifting gears
yeah,
back to the early 90s, digging into a true rally legend,
that's right.
the Mazda 323 GTR.
The 323 GTR.
Now, if you're thinking, wait, a 323 rally legend? Hear me out.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize what this car is all about.
This wasn't your average grocery getter.
Oh,
Mazda only built 2,200 of these bad boys,
2,200 worldwide.
with a tiny fraction ending up in France.
A very small number.
Like 200 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Really rare.
What we're talking about here is a homologation special.
Exactly.
Mazda built the 323 GTR for one reason.
To conquer the rally scene.
Okay, so for those not deep in the rally world, homologation special means Mazda had to build a certain number of street-legal versions to qualify for racing. So what we got was this rare beast
Yeah.
that was basically a race car disguised as a hatchback.
Exactly, and it wasn't all talk either.
In 1993, the 323 GTR clinched the Group N Wendell Rally Championship title, proving its performance chocks.
Wow.
This wasn't just some badge-engineered poser, it was a genuine rally weapon.
Now, I've heard some folks describe the GTR styling as, shall we say, unique?
Yeah, it's a unique-looking car.
Those boxy fenders,
Yeah.
the triple vents on the hood,
Uh-huh.
even the fog lights integrated into the bumper. It definitely wasn't your typical 90s hot hatch.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But the styling is definitely polarizing, but every design element served a purpose.
Okay.
Those hood vents, for instance, were crucial for cooling the turbocharged engine, especially during those grueling rally stages.
Okay.
Form follows function, as they say.
Yeah.
But the real story lies beneath the skin with the heart of this beast, the engine.
All right, let's talk horsepower. I know this wasn't some V8 muscle car, but for a little 1.8-liter four-cylinder, it packed a serious punch, right?
You bet it did. They called it the BPD, which stood for Big Turbo. And they weren't kidding. The Japanese version churned out an impressive 210 horsepower.
Wow.
But even the slightly detuned European version with 185 horsepower could hit 60 miles per hour in about 7 seconds.
Okay.
That was respectable back then and still pretty quick today.
Hold on, detuned. What was the deal with that?
The joys of emissions regulations. Europe had stricter rules back then, so Mazda had to dial back the boost a bit for the European market.
Okay.
But even with the reduced power, the 323 GTR was no slouch.
So it wasn't just brute force. There was some serious engineering behind this engine.
Absolutely.
What made it so special?
Well, the BPD wasn't some off-the-shelf unit. It was developed specifically for the 323 GTR by Mazda's Motorsports Engineering Group.
Okay.
This was the same team responsible for the legendary Mazda 787B that won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1991.
Wait a minute, the Le Mans winning team?
Yeah.
They put those guys on a 323 hatchback project. That's wild.
It speaks volumes about how seriously Mazda took this car. They weren't messing around. This engine had sodium-cooled exhaust valves, oil-cooled pistons, a specially designed manifold system, and a ball-bearing turbocharger.
Whoa.
All these features were pretty exotic for the time, especially on a relatively affordable car.
Okay, I have to admit, you're losing me a bit with the tech talk. Break it down for me.
Okay.
Why were these features such a big deal?
Imagine you're flying down a dusty rally stage engine, screaming at full tilt.
Okay.
Those sodium-cooled valves act like tiny radiators, dissipating heat like crazy, so the engine can handle the intense stress. And the oil-cooled pistons, with their internal oil channels, keep those critical components from overheating.
So basically, they built an engine that could take a serious beating. They weren't worried about it blowing up mid-row.
Exactly. Reliability was key, and Mazda went to great lengths to ensure this engine could handle the punishment of rally driving.
Okay.
And it wasn't just about durability. The BPD was designed for performance, too. The special manifold system was all about optimizing airflow, reducing that dreaded turbo lag, and giving the engine snappy throttle response.
Turbo lag. The bane of many a turbocharged car. So how do they tackle that?
They used equal-length intake and exhaust manifolds, which helped balance the air volume and pressure across all 4 cylinders.
Okay.
This clever design resulted in a smoother and more responsive power delivery, even at low revs.
Gotcha.
And then there was the ball-bearing turbocharger. Unlike traditional journal bearings, which rely on oil for lubrication, ball bearings create less friction.
Okay.
This meant the turbo could spool up much quicker, further minimizing turbo lag.
So it sounds like they really sweated the details to make this engine a true performer.
They did.
But as we all know, power is nothing without control.
You're absolutely right, and that's where the 323 GTR's all-wheel drive system comes into play.
Okay.
But to understand how special this system was, we need to talk a bit about the mastermind behind the whole project,
Okay.
Joachim Warmbold.
Warmbold. Wasn't he a former rally driver himself?
Yes, he was.
Kind of a legend in the rally world.
That's him. In the late 80s, Warmbold was the president of Mazda Rally Team Europe.
Okay.
He had this vision of creating a car that would not only boost Mazda's image in motorsport, but also capture the hearts of young enthusiasts.
Okay.
He saw the success of the Lancia Delta HF Integrale and wanted to create a worthy rival, but at a more attainable price point.
So he basically pitched this Rally 323 idea to Mazda's higher-ups, saying, hey, let's build a giant killer that won't break the bank.
Exactly. And to his credit, Mazda had the guts to back him up.
Interesting.
Warmbold knew that to win over a new generation of drivers, performance couldn't be reserved for the elite.
Okay.
He saw an opportunity to create a car that was both aspirational and attainable.
So he got the green light, and then what? Did Mazda hand the project over to their top engineers and say, make it happen?
They did, and those engineers really embraced Warmbold's vision.
Mm-hmm.
They created a car that was not only fast, but also incredibly capable and fun to drive.
All right, let's dive into that all-wheel drive system, what made it so special.
Well, unlike many all-wheel drive systems of that era, which were primarily front-wheel drive with a rear-wheel drive assist,
Okay.
the 323 GTR featured a full-time system with not one, but two viscous limited slip differentials.
Okay, I'm trying to keep up here. 2 differentials, you say. What exactly does that mean for the average driver?
Think of it this way. A typical open differential just sends power to the wheel with the least resistance.
Okay.
So if you're on a slippery surface and one wheel starts spinning, all the power goes to that spinning wheel and you go nowhere fast.
Yeah.
But a limited slip differential is much smarter. It can sense when a wheel is slipping and will send power to the wheel with more grip.
So it's like having a tiny brain inside the drivetrain, constantly making sure the power goes where it's needed most.
Exactly. And having two of these limited slip diffs, one in the center and one in the rear, meant the 323 GTR could maintain incredible traction even on loose or slippery surfaces, which of course is essential for a rally car.
Right. You're often dealing with gravel, dirt, snow, all kinds of unpredictable terrain in rally racing.
Exactly. But there's another fascinating aspect of this all-wheel drive system.
Okay.
Mazda tuned it for a rear-biased torque split.
Rear-biased. Wait, most all-wheel drive cars are front-biased, right?
You're right. Most modern all-wheel drive systems are primarily front-wheel drive for fuel efficiency and stability.
Okay.
But Mazda, under Warmbold's guidance, wanted the 323 GTR to have a more playful and engaging driving experience.
Okay.
So they set up the system to send 57% of the torque to the rear wheel.
Okay. I see where they were going with this, a bit of that rear-wheel drive magic.
Yeah.
Did it work?
It did. This setup gave the car a more balanced feel, allowing for those fun and controlled slides that rally drivers love.
Okay.
It also contributed to the GTR's impressive handling, allowing drivers to rotate the car more easily through corners. It was agile, responsive, and most importantly, a blast to drive.
So it was like the best of both worlds, the stability and traction of all-wheel drive with the fun factor of rear-wheel drive. But wasn't that a risky move? Rear-wheel drive cars can be a bit tricky to handle, especially in slippery conditions.
It was a bold move for sure, but Mazda's engineers knew what they were doing. They didn't just throw a bunch of power at the rear wheels and hope for the best. They carefully tuned the suspension and the differentials to ensure the car was both capable and controllable, even at the limit.
Okay, so they had the engine, they had the drivetrain. What about the suspension? I imagine they had to beef things up a bit to handle all that rally action.
They did. Up front, they used the tried-and-true McPherson strut setup, but at the rear, they used Mazda's patented twin trapezoidal link, TTL, suspension system.
Then trapezoidal link. Sounds pretty high-tech.
It was a fairly advanced system for its time.
Okay.
And they weren't just going for all-out stiffness either. They knew that to be successful in rally, you need a car that can handle a variety of surfaces, from smooth tarmac to bumpy gravel roads.
Right.
So they had to find that sweet spot between sportiness and compliance.
So it wasn't just a rock-hard track-focused setup?
Not at all. They stiffened up the bushings and increased the spring rates compared to the standard 323, but they didn't go overboard. They also tuned the roll stiffness to find the perfect balance for controlled handling without sacrificing ride comfort.
So they weren't just slapping on stiffer springs and calling it a day. There was a lot of thought and fine-tuning that went into the suspension, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember, this was designed to be a Group N rally car, which means modifications were limited. They had to work within those constraints and extract the most performance possible from the stock components. And based on the car's success in rallying, it's safe to say they nailed it.
It sounds like they really thought of everything. The engine, the drivetrain, the suspension. They really built this car from the ground up to be a true rally contender.
And they did. It's a testament to Achim Warmbold's vision and the engineering talent at Mazda.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about another crucial aspect of any performance car, especially one designed for rally.
Okay.
The brakes.
Right. You need to be able to scrub speed just as effectively as you can build it up, especially when you're navigating those tight and twisty rally stages.
Oh.
So what kind of stopping power did the 323 GTR pack?
Well, they kept it relatively simple but effective. The car had four-wheel disc brakes with ventilated discs up front for improved heat dissipation.
Okay.
And thanks to those 15-inch alloy wheels, they could fit larger diameter discs, which meant a greater braking surface area.
So bigger discs, better cooling.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good recipe for strong and consistent braking.
Sure.
But were there any downsides to this setup?
Well, there was one notable drawback.
Okay.
Brake fade. Under prolonged heavy braking, like you might experience during a spirited drive or, a full throttle rally stage, the brakes could start to lose their effectiveness.
Ah, I see. So they were strong enough for most situations, but maybe not quite up to the task of sustained high-performance driving. That makes sense, considering this was a homologation special designed primarily for racing.
Exactly. But it's worth noting that ABS or anti-lock braking system was available as an option. So buyers who wanted that extra safety net and improved braking performance in challenging conditions could opt for it.
Makes sense. ABS was still a relatively new technology back then, so
Yes.
it wasn't standard equipment on all cars, even performance models. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about something a bit more subjective.
Okay.
The 323 GTR's styling.
Yes, the looks. We touched on this earlier, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Was it a head turner, a sleeper, or something in between?
Well, head turner might be a bit strong. Let's just say it had a very distinctive look, one that certainly sparked debate among enthusiasts.
It definitely wasn't a wallflower. It had all the hallmarks of a rally-bred machine. The aggressive front and rear bumpers, those prominent fog lights integrated into the bumper, the triple vent hood, and those unique 15-inch alloy wheels.
I'll admit the triple vent hood was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It gave the car a real sense of purpose, like it meant business.
Yeah.
But did it actually serve a functional purpose, or was it just for show?
Oh, it was definitely functional. Those vents weren't just for aesthetics.
Yeah.
They played a crucial role in extracting heat from the engine bay, keeping things cooler under the hood, especially during those high-stress rally stages. It's a perfect example of form-following function.
I like that.
Yeah.
So while it might not have been the most conventionally attractive car, it definitely had a purpose-built aesthetic that hinted at its performance capabilities.
Exactly. And I think that's part of what makes it so appealing today. It's not trying to be something it's not. It's a raw, unapologetically functional machine.
Yeah.
And that honesty is refreshing in a world of overly styled cars.
I see what you mean. It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah.
It might look unassuming at first glance, but underneath that boxy exterior lies a true performance beast. But let's be honest, some of those design choices were, shall we say, a bit bold.
Bold is one way to put it. Some might even say polarizing. But you know what? It worked. The 323 GTR definitely stood out from the crowd.
Yeah.
It had a unique personality, and in the world of performance cars, that's a valuable trait.
I agree. It's better to be memorable than to blend in with the masses. It's like that saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Exactly. And memorable it was. But sadly, its time in the spotlight was relatively short-lived. Production of the 323 GTR ended in 1994, and with only 2,200 units ever built, it quickly became a sought-after collector's item.
So here we are today talking about a car that most people have probably never even heard of. But for those who appreciate a true performance underdog, the 323 GTR holds a special place in automotive history.
It's a hidden gem, a forgotten hero of the Japanese performance car scene. And what's even more remarkable is that despite its rarity and its rally heritage, it's still relatively affordable.
Wait, affordable? We're talking about a limited edition, rally-bred, turbocharged, all-wheel drive pocket rocket. How can that be affordable? Don't those usually go for crazy money?
You'd think so, right? But compared to some of its more illustrious contemporaries, like the Lancia Delta HF Integrale or the Ford Escort Cosworth, the 323 GTR is definitely a bargain. Of course, finding a well-preserved, unmodified example is the challenge.
Right. That's always the catch with these rare and desirable cars. Many have been modified, abused, or neglected over the years. Finding a pristine example takes time, patience, and a bit of luck. So for those listeners out there who might be thinking, hey, I need to get my hands on one of these, what advice would you give them?
Well, first and foremost, do your research. Learn as much as you can about the car, its history, its common problems, and what to look for when inspecting a potential purchase.
Oh,
There are tons of resources available, online forums, enthusiast groups, even dedicated websites.
that's great advice. Knowledge is power, especially when you're dealing with a rare car. You don't want to get caught out by unscrupulous sellers or hidden problems. What else should potential buyers keep in mind?
Be patient and don't rush into a purchase. Take your time, inspect multiple cars, and don't be afraid to walk away if something doesn't feel right. And be prepared to travel. A car like this might not be sitting on a dealer lot in your hometown.
Yeah.
You might need to expand your search radius to find the right one.
So it's all about being informed, patient, and persistent. Sounds like the same qualities that make a good rally driver.
You could say that. And remember, the hunt is part of the fun, the thrill of the chase, the anticipation of finally finding that perfect example. That's all part of the experience. And once you find that gem, get ready for an amazing driving experience.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
What is it actually like to drive one of these rally-bred beasts? Have you ever had the chance to get behind the wheel of a 323 GTR?
I have, and it was an unforgettable experience. The first thing that struck me was the engine. That BPD big turbo is a real gem. It pulls strong from low revs, and once the boost kicks in, it takes off like a rocket.
So it really lives up to that pocket rocket nickname.
Oh, absolutely. But it's not just about raw power, it's the way that power is delivered.
Okay.
It's smooth, linear, and predictable, making it incredibly confidence-inspiring. And you don't feel like you're constantly fighting the car.
Yeah.
It's a willing partner in the driving experience.
So it's not a scary, snappy boost monster. You know the kind of car that tries to kill you if you sneeze on the throttle.
Not at all. It's a very well-mannered car despite its rally heritage. The all-wheel drive system provides incredible grip even in slippery conditions.
Okay.
You can really feel the rear-biased torque split at work, giving the car a playful and agile character.
I bet those viscous, limited slip differentials work wonders, especially when you're pushing the car hard.
They do. You can really throw the car into corners and it just sticks like glue. And if you do manage to get the rear end to step out, it's very progressive and controllable. It's not a car that's going to bite you if you make a mistake.
So it's a car that rewards skilled drivers, but doesn't punish you for minor errors. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. It's a very forgiving car, making it a joy to drive even on twisty back roads. The steering is precise and communicative, giving you a great sense of connection with the road. And the suspension, while firm, is still compliant enough to soak up bumps and dips without beating you up. It strikes that perfect balance between performance and comfort.
It sounds like a fantastic all-around package.
Yeah.
It's the kind of car that you could drive every day, yet it has the performance potential to put a smile on your face whenever you want to have a bit of fun.
Exactly. It's a true driver's car. A reminder that driving can be more than just getting from point A to point B. It can be an experience, a connection between you and the machine.
I like that. It's about the journey, the feeling, the emotions that a car can evoke.
Precisely. And I think that's something that's often missing in modern cars with all their technology and driver assists. Don't get me wrong, those advancements are amazing and they make driving safer and more convenient. But
they can sometimes feel a bit sterile, a bit too removed from the driving experience. It's like you're just along for the ride rather than actively participating in it.
that's a great way to put it. And that's why I think there's such a resurgence of interest in classic and vintage cars. People are yearning for that raw mechanical connection that older cars offer.
That sense of being in control, of feeling the car respond to your inputs, of working with the machine rather than against it.
Exactly. And the 323 GTR is a perfect example of that. It's a car that demands your attention, makes you work for it, and rewards you with a truly visceral driving experience.
It sounds like a car that can rekindle that passion for driving, that sense of excitement that might have faded over the years.
It could very well be. It's a car that reminds you why you fell in love with driving in the first place.
Well said. Well, folks, there you have it. The Mazda 323 GTR. A forgotten hero of the Japanese performance car scene. A rally-bred pocket rocket that's as rare as it is exhilarating. It's a car that embodies a certain spirit. A time when driving was more about the connection between driver and machine, less about technology and distractions. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought, something to ponder as you go about your day.
Imagine yourself behind the wheel of this little beast.
Yeah, feeling the rush of that turbocharged engine as you carve through a twisty mountain road.
The all-wheel drive system clinging to the tarmac like a gecko.
The wind whipping through your hair.
Could this be your next vintage car obsession?
It's a question worth pondering. It is. And on that note, I think that wraps up our deep dive into the Mazda 323 GTR.
I think so.
A car that proves sometimes the most memorable machines aren't the flashiest or the most expensive.
Yeah.
But the ones that offer a unique blend of character, performance,
and soul.
and pure driving pleasure.
A big thank you to all you Vintage Car Chronicles listeners for joining us on this journey back to the golden age of rally.
Remember to check out new episodes of Vintage Car Chronicles daily on Spotify.
Until next time.
Happy motoring.
It really makes you think, huh?
It does. It makes you want to go out and find one.
Yeah, get behind the wheel.
Experience it for yourself.
And that wraps up our deep dive into the Mazda 323 GTR.
I think so.
A true rally legend.
Yeah, a hidden gem.
A reminder that driving can be so much more than just transportation.
Absolutely.
It can be a true passion, a connection, a source of pure joy.
Well said.
A big thank you to all you Vintage Car Chronicles listeners for joining us on this adventure.
Be sure to tune in for more deep dives into the world of vintage cars.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating story from automotive history.
Until then, happy motoring.